Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihil kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. I am going to spend right now talking about one verse that is absolutely going to change your mind on addictions if you haven't heard of the explanation of this verse before. This verse is in Surah Al-Hud, chapter 114. And I'm going to just read part of it. It's a bit of a longer verse, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this verse, إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتِ يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ, that indeed goodness, hasanat, يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ, is the thing that washes away or does away with bad deeds. Okay? So this is an insight Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving on the way deeds work. Now, let's contextualize this in the topic today, which is what? Anybody remember? Social media addiction. Okay, good. So social media addiction, right? Social media addiction is particularly important because we, as human beings, we have like limited time. This is something that is always on the back of our head, right? Anything and everything we do, we realize that, look, I have limited time, this is my most valuable resource, and I need to do the best I can with it. And it becomes really urgent when you start realizing that a lot of your time is not in your own hands. Let's like 8 hours of your day, for example, going to sleep. You just have to do it. Eating, going to the washroom, you have to do it. Traveling, school and work, you sort of have to do it, right? There's a lot of things that are just non-negotiable. A lot of your time is supposed to go into. I wish I had like a board over here because I could show you like an actual box of how much of your time gets filled up. But 2/3 almost of your time actually gets filled up by things that are non-negotiable, roughly speaking. It differs person to person, but roughly 2/3 of your time as a human being gets filled up with things that you don't necessarily have control over, whether you want to do it or not. These are things that are not free time. This is like you have to do this stuff. Now, there was a study that came out in America, this is 2018, 2019, that absolutely shocked, especially a lot of people that were Gen Z. It was a study that was done on people, what they do with their free time. And it just so came out that the limited amount of free time that you already have, that is now negotiable and you can do what you want, 93% of that free time on average, not the extreme, I'm not talking about extreme, I'm talking average. An average of what's up? 310? Okay, perfect. An average of 93% of your free time as an average Gen Z teenager between the ages 15, 18 is spent like in front of screens. 93% average. Okay? Keep that in mind. Now you might say, okay, that's definitely not me. I'm not that average statistic, right? But once you start looking at your screen time and watch hours, you realize you're not very far from it, generally speaking. Now, what is usually the most used thing in screen time? I'm sure you guys already know the answer. I don't even need to give the statistics. But what is it?
Social media.
Social media. Social media is the thing that eats up a lot of that screen time that you already have. Now, we would much rather do other things with our time rather than social media, and we know it in the back of our heads, but we still do it anyways. And so, I've had this happen before, where people come to me and ask me for a solution, for the problem of, I am using social media, I don't want to use social media, like I know in the back of my head, my time would be better spent elsewhere, but it's just too difficult, and I just use it anyways. How do I solve this problem? And my answer to this, and I want you guys to remember this, is this is not a problem that you're solving. This is how you're dealing with the problem in the first place. You're not looking for a solution. There's something deeper, okay? Does that make sense? The reason I'm saying this is because if you take a look at any contemporary psychologist on the study of addictions and ask them what is the number one cause of addiction, the answer is clear-cut in pretty much every mass study that was ever done, which is purposelessness. When a person has no vision to look forward to, when a person wakes up one day and doesn't know what to do with their free time, I don't have this entire purpose that I just wake up and it just overtakes me immediately, my sense of purpose. If that's not there, then your carnal desire, whether it's social media, whether it's drugs, whether it's pornography, whether it's video games, take any addiction you want, that will overtake you. Okay? Dr. Gabor Mate is one of the biggest psychologists right now, if you don't, and by the way, I'm going to quote a lot of psychology because I'm a psychology student myself, and addiction is a psychological thing as well. As much as people would like to say, oh yeah, just focus on your iman and everything else will be solved. No, addiction is a lot deeper than just increase your iman. So Dr. Gabor Mate said something very important. He said, if you want to take a look at what addictions, including social media, if you want to take a look at why people are into these addictions in the first place, you don't look at what's wrong with it. He said, you look at what's right with it. Interesting statement, right? What do you mean, what's right with it? He says, what does this addiction provide this human being that otherwise wouldn't be there? And the answer is, it provides a sense of control, satisfaction, a sense of temporary peace and security from whatever they have. Escapism, really, at the end of the day, right? It's a relief that they get. When you ask yourself the question, and that's the answer you get, you begin to realize, why are these things missing in the first place from this person's life? The relief, the sense of peace, all these things, gratitude even perhaps. Why are these things missing from this person's life in the first place? Right? Once again, I'm putting that out there, numerous answers to this question. But even the statement by Dr. Gabor Mate is also getting at the same thing. It is the lack of purpose and the sense of purposelessness that leads you to that state of anxiety. How many people over here are university? Hands up. Okay, it's like half. How many are high school? Hands up. Now, I want you to keep your hands up if you know exactly what you want to do in life, like career, education, and everything mapped out. Okay, that's surprising, half. I was expecting a little bit less, but regardless, the fact that you have it mapped out is going to be one of your biggest allies when it comes to battling addiction. And if you don't have it mapped out, this is going to be one of your biggest flaws when it comes to addiction. Because once again, purposelessness is not simply, I don't know what I live my life for. Because everybody will come and tell you, oh, I live my life for Islam, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that you are now filled with purpose. There are people that can derive purpose and they're not even Muslim. And they can clearly have, this is my set purpose and this is what I'm living for. And these are people that are high achievers all of a sudden. You see them. He's not even, you look at people that are online and they're not even Muslim. They don't even pray. They don't even do any of these things. And yet they're able to overcome addiction. They're able to live a very disciplined life. They're able to, live a very high achieving, high status life, quote unquote, right? I'm not defining these things as success, by the way, but I'm just saying that ability and resilience to have the discipline, to overcome addictions, to live life the way you actually say you will, not the way that you, quote unquote, want to, because your carnal desires always tell you what to do. These people come from a sense of purpose. They have things figured out and they know what to do when they wake up. They don't leave the time for their carnal self to desire. What should I do right now? I don't know what to do. Boom, carnal desire comes with a bunch of options and you pick whatever is more satisfying to do. That doesn't come to them. Even though they're not praying, even though they're not doing dhikr, even though they're not Muslim. Does that make sense? Once again, I'm really trying to spend a lot of time slapping the conspiracy theory that if you focus on your prayers only, even though I'm going to get to this, the Islamic solution is beyond everything else. But the idea that you can just increase your iman and alone and then that solves everything is a false understanding. Because there's a lot of things underlying the dhikr. There's a lot of things underlying the salat. It's not the salat alone that is sold to us as the solution. Now, this verse, إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتِ يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ, is now playing into context over here where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, these sayyi'at, these bad deeds that you have, what wipes them away? It's the hasanat, it's the good deeds. In other words, when you take a look at your addiction and you don't have a purpose, then you are making the addiction out to be the biggest thing you're fighting against. Okay, so let's say you have video game addiction, for example, and you want to tackle video game addiction and quit video game addiction. And you begin to start, figuring out, oh, how am I going to do this? It's ruining my life. It's overtaking me and stuff like that. This, what I just explained, the idea of making it a big deal and this is the biggest thing you're going to conquer, leads to what we call in psychology rumination, which is the idea of playing negative thoughts again and again and again to the point they begin to reinforce themselves. And you begin to actually believe it. You begin to believe video game is the biggest addiction ever. This is my biggest battle ever. This is going to dictate my life. This is going to be the thing that's going to, you make it a big deal even though you shouldn't. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you in this verse directly, if you focus on the sayyi'at and you think that you're going to come up with the sayyi'at just like that, that is not going to solve the problem. Allah's telling you the hasanat are going to deal with the sayyi'at. It's the good deeds that you do so many good deeds that it just washes away the bad deeds. Does that make sense now? So the full round circle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us from this word, once again I'll quote it, it's chapter 11 verse 114. Okay? I want you guys all to know that verse down. Chapter 11 verse 114, Surah Hud, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, this is the way you do it. You find a sense of purpose. You dedicate yourself to it. And the good that you come from that purposeness, or I mean that purposeness isn't a word, but the good that comes from pursuing that purpose, and your confidence in that is supposed to wash away your lack of discipline, your carnal desires, your addictions in the first place. So let me now give a story so we can narrow it down. I talked about addictions in general. When is the social media addiction part coming? Because I'm getting to that. I'm going to give you a little bit of my story because just like you guys, I'm probably similar age to a lot of you guys. I'm 23 now. But social media addiction, just like everybody else in my generation, was one of my most difficult battles. Just let me take a sip of water real quick. Okay, so when I used to be a little kid in elementary school, my favorite thing to do was play video games all day, every day. This continued on until high school, all right? I used to be a big old League of Legends fan, and I used to just literally eat, breathe, sleep, all that stuff, okay? Terrible, terrible.
Do you still play it?
No, not anymore. I haven't played in years. But I was addicted to it as a kid, back in like 2015, 2016, when it was very early on in the game as well. And it consumed me. I was very overweight, I don't know, I think borderline obese, even though I wasn't diagnosed and stuff like that. But, you know, I wasn't taking care of myself. My hygiene was terrible as well. My skin, I have eczema as well. So my eczema used to take over, and I used to have like an entire like fungal infection taking over my neck, creeping into my face. I used to have some around my eyes as well, and it would blister up, dark patches, stuff like that. And I never dealt with them, right? Because who cares? I got my League of Legends, what the heck, right? That's all it was. But in high school, after I finished grade 10, something sat in me, and I realized, look, I can't just be a loner loser. I need to actually get friends and stuff like that, and that actually propelled me to eventually quit video games. Okay, and I started going to the gym and losing weight and all this stuff, right? And what happened is the transition from a video game addiction, which I was slowly overcoming, was about to lead to something very quickly, where by the end of my grade 11 year, I had a completely different transformation in my life. But what I did now is, now I had social media accounts, where I used to post pictures of myself. I even made, this is going to be cringe, but I made a glow up video on TikTok. All right, I'll admit this was back in the day. It was cringe stuff. But what happened, I realized, I woke up very quickly once I started posting this stuff and all this stuff in the start of grade 12, is that the observation I made about myself is there was nothing I realized I did more consciously in my life than open and close my own phone. And that absolutely destroyed me at one point, because I was like, I thought of myself as becoming a better person by overcoming the video game addiction, only to get wrapped up in this other addiction. And because this destroyed me, I needed to figure out why. And what happened was, the conclusion I came to and stuff like that made me end up delete all social media. I actually deleted all my videos. I deleted my accounts. I deleted the app after that as well. And I didn't have social media in my life for around 2 years. 2 years, I had absolutely no social media. No Instagram, no Facebook. I had a YouTube, but YouTube, it wasn't even on my phone. I deleted it off my phone. I could only see it on my computer, really. And I lived my life like that for 2 years. And in that 2 years, and once again, I'm only giving this story for you guys to understand the lessons I'm going to give you afterwards. In those 2 years, what I ended up doing is a lot more than I could have accomplished, or I did accomplish, in the rest of my life multiple fold. I started memorizing the Quran from scratch because I'd forgotten it from my childhood very quickly, right? And so alhamdulillah, I was able to memorize over 20 juz. I started learning Arabic, and that helped me loads as well. I started, I used to trade in the stock market for a bit. This was before that stuff, right? That was going well as well. Later on, I messed up and stuff like that. But I'm just saying, because I overcame that stuff, now my free time is permitting me to do a lot more things. However, you can now see where I'm probably going with this. I was only doing things for the sake of doing them. I didn't actually have a purpose. I was still, even when I quit the social media and cold turkey and stuff like that, I did it because of disdain on myself. And what that quickly led to is one addiction after another, and I was addicted to another thing called self-help. So it went from addiction to addiction to addiction. Okay, that's what I'm getting to at the end of the day. All of it really rooted down because I didn't know what to do at the end of my day. If you still ask me, even when I quit social media or before I quit social media, I was like, what are you doing in life? Oh, I just have the journal. Oh, I'm just, losing weight. I'm just trying to find a way to make money. Stuff like that. Very vague stuff. Okay? So once again, I'm hammering down this understanding of the verse. Even if you manage to quit one addiction, whether it's social media or otherwise, don't think that, oh, that was the thing that solved it. Because you'll just get roped into another addiction that will eat up your time and stuff as well. Does that make sense? Okay, so we have another 10 minutes, and I'll probably finishing up in 5 minutes or less. But I'm going to end with these two things that are now specific to social media. Number one, understand that now social media as an addiction in particular is something that is capitalizing on what human beings call one of the greatest human resource on the planet, which is human attention. You guys realize that, right? Human attention, this is before social media. Like throughout human history itself, the attention of human beings is the most important things that any businessman, politician is all after. There was a Roman, There was a Roman poet by the name of Julianus, I think, that wrote, if you give them bread and circuses, they will never revolt. If you give them bread and circuses, they will never revolt. Why? Because these are the things that capture people's attention the most. It is the idea of a lavish, comfortable, get a feast together and stuff like that. The circuses are entertainment. What are those two things in the first place? It's to, capture the attention of the person. Nobody's going to a feast and all of a sudden thinking all deeply about life and contemplating and all this thing while everybody's having a good time. There's people laughing in the background. That doesn't usually happen. Same thing with circuses, right? They're there for entertainment and keep human attention occupied. What does those bread and circuses do naturally? Because of the lack of attention that you give yourself, you can never actually conclude a purpose, can you? Right? It's interesting how things click together. Because of bread and circuses, you don't have time to give yourself the attention of figuring out your own purpose in life. And then, it just so happens, those are the things that even the elites would write thousands of years ago to keep people subdued. And it's no different today. The funding given to some of the greatest psychologists and data scientists today right now to literally hook you on social media like a rat on a Skinner, getting into multiple psychological illnesses. One of them is keeping up with the Jonesies, if you're familiar with, right? The idea that you always compare yourself to your neighbors. If your neighbor gets a bigger house, then you feel the necessity to get a bigger house. You open your social media feed, it's the same thing when you see your friends living a type of life. Oh, this person got a lot of money. Oh, this person got married. Or, that psychological bias is going to creep in. I don't care how strong you are. That psychological bias is going to kick in. And they know that. The people who designed these social media algorithms know that, and that's exactly what they want to do. It's the modern version of bread and circuses at the end of the day. Keep your attention hooked. That creates a negative feedback cycle where your inattention makes you sadder. You being sad makes you more inattentive to your purpose, and you can never really find yourself the time to figure yourself out and overcome stuff like this in the first place. So keeping up with the Joneses is one of the biggest repercussions of this social media algorithm. And the second one is the lack of altruism you get. Who knows what altruism means here? All right? Okay, let me explain it because this is very few people. Altruism is it's the empathy, or it's the emotion really at the end of the day, the emotion of trying to help other people. That's altruism. And it's now behaved in a manner whether you're serving people and stuff like that, but that's an altruistic person, a person that's in service to others. It just so happens in cognitive behavioral therapy when we're trying to get people, overcoming whatever behaviors they have through listing out, their unplanned and planned behaviors, there's a rehab technique called Alcohol Anonymous that helps alcoholics overcome their own alcoholism. And they will literally write down the most important thing that they taught these people to do that helped them overcome that addiction is to live an altruistic life. It's to live a life that is in service of other people. And this is something that's, once again, إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتِ يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ. It's your good deeds that wipe away your bad deeds. The altruistic personality, the ability to help other people, is the thing that is helping people overcome their own addictions as deep as alcoholism would get you as well. And just like any other addiction, when you actually try to quit social media now, if social media is something like, once again, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, like any of these social medias, just like any other addictions, you have withdrawal symptoms, okay? I remember when I went cold turkey on social media, I was probably averaging an hour and a half sleep the next day. My dopamine receptors were fried. My neurochemistry was just completely rewired from hours of just social media feed every single day. I'm not saying it's easy. All right, I'm not saying everybody should go cold turkey. That's not the recommendation I'm giving. I'm just giving, there are withdrawal effects when you're going through something like this. But once again, إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتِ يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Balad as well, فَلَقْتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةِ. And so you should, actually it's a different word. Yeah, no, فَلَقْتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةِ. You should have ran through or pierced through the tough wall. Talking about the believers or the people that didn't believe, actually I believe over here. That if only these people went through that difficult path and broke through, they would have seen what's on the other side. So these are verses of, number one, understanding that if you make your social media addiction to be the thing, your primary enemy to your life, that's not the way of going about things. The Quranic perspective is quite clear on this. The way of going about these things is to actually sit down, try to figure your life out. If you don't know, if you have no idea what you want to do your life with, sit down with people that do. Sit down with your parents, perhaps. Sit down with people you consider to be a mentor, right? Reach out to people. You want to figure that thing out ASAP, because that's the thing that is, once again, going to not only help you deal with social media addiction, but every other addiction. So keep that in mind. The purposelessness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling you away from that. Keeping up with the Joneses, okay? Do not live somebody else's life. That should be clear as day, but we fall into this all the time when we're following these internet celebrities, when we're following people we look up to, these social media personalities. All they can do, because they are a social media personality themselves, is post their best times. They'll post the times when they wake up and have this perfect morning routine. They'll post the best times when they have this, perfect life. And you begin to assume that to be the natural. That's keeping up with the Joneses. That becomes conditioned in your mind to be a standard, which it's not. These same social media personalities will never post their lowest point. I'm not saying all of them, but generally speaking, they would never post their low points. They would never post their failures, because that's not good for their brand, right? That's what it is. So beware of keeping up with the Joneses. Do not live somebody else's life on social media. And definitely, if you let that happen in a long enough time period, this is called intermittent reinforcement, where that in the beginning you might realize, oh, I shouldn't be watching this and having these standards. Do it again and again. You'll convince yourself you do. Okay, because it gets reinforced in your mind. And then the final thing I pointed out over here is to become an altruistic person. Okay, becoming an altruistic person, once again, it still falls on the verse of Innal hasanat yudhibna sayyi'at, where you become a person that is in service of other people, and that will actually help you overcome this stuff. And one action point I'll probably give you over here as well is to help you guys find purpose. I do believe, every single one of you, if you literally ask yourself the question while you're listening to this, I don't know what I want to do, Imam Hassan and his wife are probably the best contacts you'll have over here right now. Okay? So I'm putting that out there. If you actually don't know what to do, to have a conversation with them. Even if you don't know, what should I have the conversation about? Let your heart out with them, right? They're here for you, okay? They're here for you, literally, they're here for you. And so, inshallah, I hope that part was of benefit. Those are 3 principles. Once again, general principles. If I had more time, oh my God, we could talk about this so much. But there's 5 minutes left. I'll have 5 minutes of Q&A over here as well. Any questions?
Yeah, so to summarize, what would you say the solution is, like from a Islamic perspective, like simply, like few sentences?
3 things are finding purpose, number 1. And purpose I defined as, it's not just, doing the rituals. It is actually finding out what you want to do in your life. Exactly what I mentioned, marriage. If you when and how you want to get married, how you want to make your income for a lot of the guys over here, that type of stuff. So purpose is a very specific term I'm using. It just doesn't mean, oh, my purpose is to worship Allah, right? Because I said non-Muslims also have purpose. So that's the first, purpose, finding your purpose. Altruism is another thing I said. So altruism, living in self-serving personality, community service and stuff like that. You just want to be a person that is in service of others instead of always thinking you're on the grind and you're locking in and you just cut everybody out. That's not the way of doing things, okay? And I gave the example of Alcoholics Anonymous as one of them, but many other. You can look at Dr. Al-Kanoji's work on altruism. It's very good stuff. So altruism is another thing that helps combat stuff like social media addiction very heavily. And then the third thing is just to be aware of keeping up with the Joneses, the psychological phenomenon where you are constantly living somebody else's life, right? If you're just aware of that, then you'll realize maybe I should not follow these people I look up to. Sure, like sometimes they motivate you. Oh my God, I want to live a life like them. But over time, quickly, you'll realize it literally rewires your own standards of what you want to live life as.
So
Being aware of that psychological bias. Those three things. Okay, find your purpose, live an altruistic life, and be aware of the psychological bias of living other people's lives, which is keeping up with the Joneses.
Can you redefine the purpose again?
Sure. So purpose is something that happens in the four domains. I'll give you a more specific one. There's 4 domains of life that people will attain purpose from. There is, number 1 is the health. So people can obtain purpose from just being a healthier person. Oh, my purpose is to live a very fit life. And a lot of people literally spend all of their waking hours, nuancing their diet and stuff like that. So there's health. Health is one thing that is one of the 4 great goals of human existence or purposes of human life. Health. The second one is wealth. So figuring out not only from your health side, but also figuring out your financial side as well. So how you're going to make money, how you're going to contribute to the world, essentially. What is the value that you're going to bring the world? That's the second thing that you want to define as part of your purpose. The third thing is wealth, relationships. So this is marriage and stuff like that, right? And even having a family, that's the third one, relationships. And then the fourth one over here is spirituality. So this is, once again, for Islam, there's no other spiritual path other than the Islamic spiritual path. But people, you would derive purpose from whatever, Buddhism, Christianity, and stuff like that. Completely faulty stuff. But these 4 things, you have to figure those 4 things out to collectively now give yourself a vision of your purpose. Yeah. This is a good question. We have 2 minutes left. Any other questions? Is anybody confused on what is the absolute next action step I should do when I leave this lecture? Because I didn't say delete social media, which is probably a lot of people were expecting that.
Well, I think just try to start building your consistency and having a good purpose. I don't know.
Give us homework.
Homework? Give you homework?
Yeah.
I gave you, okay, here's homework. Okay, give you guys homework. I'll give you homework. I don't know if everybody wants homework.
Just an absolute, just an action item.
So was I right? Is that a confusing point?
You didn't give anything.
Okay, let me do a reason. Who has a YouTube account here? Who spends time on YouTube?
Like scrolling?
Yeah, on the app, on a daily. Okay, let's say on a daily basis. Who opens YouTube every day?
Every day.
How many people open Instagram every day? Raise your hand. Instagram's huge. How many people open TikTok every day? Raise your hand. By the way, when I raise my hand, I'm just looking at you. I don't do it. I don't have. Okay, I'll tell you one thing as well. Okay, 30 seconds. One thing I do. Look, once you understand that addictions such as social media are inherently more powerful than your own will. One thing I did, even after I was able to quit social media and stuff like that, I still do not have any of the social media apps on my phone. I actually have a burner phone that I left back in Regina, but I never carry the social media apps on my phone. If I ever need to absolutely download the social media app, then I'll do it intentionally and delete it intentionally on the spot on this phone. But otherwise, I never keep my social media apps on my phone when I'm carrying this stuff around anyways. Because even me, there was a clip on recently, Andrew Tate, who's always preaching about, guys, delete social media, take your life seriously and stuff like that. He said as soon as he opened Instagram, he literally wasted 15 minutes and he had no idea. And he got hooked in and he just blew himself away. So even what some people call the epitome of discipline and productivity can't even withstand some of these things. So the idea of, I'm just going to use it less is not a practical idea, okay? You need to once again, figure out more technical and alternative ways like I did right now. For example, keeping all my social media on my burner phone only because I absolutely need it because I do social media stuff. But yeah.
So you'd say that's a practical step, right? Having 2 different phones.
Yeah, but once again, this stuff is not the solution though. Because I have limited time, I gave you guys the most important principles. I didn't give you guys this burner phone stuff. I only answered because of the question. This is not going to solve it. Just because you get a burner phone, that doesn't solve it, okay? Think about the deeper things I told you right now, which is the purposelessness and altruism and the psychological biases, okay? And Jazakallah khairan. Yeah, we're good.